the last time I had the pleasure of interviewing you, if you go back into the time machine, you say that's December 2018. You were, promoting a new project called Discontinued. Now, a lot of people that you speak with who are creative people within entertainment, it's like one project every 3 years, 2 years. COVID didn't even slow you down. There's been dozens of new specials and projects and all that. So congratulations. Did you ever get to take a break?
No, but I know this is going to sound cheesy, like I'm Chuck Norris or something, but I don't want to break. I'll at some point in my 60s or 70s, I'll retire and then I'll have a break. But that's the thing is, like, to answer your question in a way that doesn't make me sound like Chuck Norris. My job, it's just so much more fun now. Like every year is more fun than the prior year. And I kind of had a tough beginning of my career. It wasn't a lot of fun for like the first probably 10 to 12 years, maybe even 15. So why now that stuff is fun? I'm doing shows every show we're doing, I'm passionate about. And if I'm honest, earlier in my career, and I think this was part of the problem, that was not the case. So I'm within reason, I'm loving 99% of every day, maybe even 99.5.
Fair assessment. That's better than most people who are funny for a living.
I'm very blessed.
Yes.
Very blessed.
The way to describe you has always been, he's a writer, director, producer, but of course, launching your own podcast network. I guess that makes you now podcast executive as well. Studio head, because hey, Comedy Dynamics is properly a studio. But in general, when you have to make small talk with somebody for 30 seconds and they go, what do you do for a living? What do you actually say at this point?
It's still a tough question to answer, but it's a tough question to answer for different reasons than it used to be. But, I feel very silly saying that I run a studio because, when you hear studio, you think Warner Brothers or Disney or whatever. So I always say, I run an independent studio, and I go very independent.
I think based on the cumulative box office growths of all the people that you worked with, the number of shows, we can't accept that little minute kind of a description. I know that's being self-deprecating in a way, but it's amazing how Comedy Dynamics and all your offshoots have become a major player. Did you envision it in like a 5 to 10 year plan, like it would get to this point, or is it just more work led to more work over time?
My goal from day one of getting to Hollywood, which was about 23 years ago, was to build a studio. So I didn't know how I was going to do it. I never in a trillion years would have thought stand-up comedy would have been the foundation, basement, first and second story of the building. But I read this book called The Long Tail in 2006, and
Seth Godin, was it?
I'm so bad. I don't know the guy's name. He was the editor for Wired.
Yeah.
And luckily that book, I bet everything on that book, and the book was right. I was very lucky.
Well, it's very different from, say, the music business, where when you sign people who used to be on major labels, you can only really expect, 5 to 10% of the people at their peak of that audience to kind of follow. But it looks like it's a better retention like that for comedians who used to be on HBO and Comedy Central specials and headlining in movies. In fact, you could argue that the people have stronger fan bases since going indie than back then. Is that your finding too?
Yeah, basically a bunch of things have happened, but the main thing that happened is stand-up is becoming a much bigger genre. So that, when I was in high school, my cafeteria, let's say it held 1,000 people, you might have 2, probably usually 0, talking about stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
Now you probably have 20 to 30. That's the first thing. Second of all, there's more comics doing it. And third of all, there's Netflix did an amazing job. They deserve a staggering. In fact, if anything, I don't think they get enough credit for this. Netflix really, the volume and the size in which they operated for about 3 or 4 years, that's a lot to do with why stand-up became a bigger genre than it had ever been. But on top of that, you had social media, so you could, if I see an Ali Wong special, rather than saying to somebody, hey, you got to go watch Ali Wong, she's great, and somebody being like, I never heard of her, I'm not going to give an hour of my time to nobody I ever heard of. Because of social media and YouTube, I could post a 5-minute clip, somebody could watch a 5-minute clip, and then when they go home, they go to Netflix and they watch the whole thing. So it really was, I think, a combination of all those things.
I'm actually surprised to hear, you being a Queens, New York native and all, that people were not super into stand-up, because if you think of the all-time great stand-up comics, how many of them came from Queens or had Queens roots? Seinfeld, I think he went to Queens College. Paul Reiser was a Queens guy. How are not more people in your childhood into stand-up?
It just wasn't a thing, at least where I grew up. And to the best of my knowledge, it really wasn't a thing until about 5 years ago, maybe 4.
Wow. Well, also credit goes to what you've done for the film industry. And what I mean by that is, when I watched the episode on, is it called The Films That Made Us?
Movies
That Made Us. I did not like Dirty Dancing growing up. When I saw this episode, it made me love Dirty Dancing.
It's the whole purpose of the show. So thank you.
I had no interest in ever watching Home Alone again as an adult. I watched the episode of the show. You see, it was actually filmed in a gymnasium in a high school. And you helped revitalize these movies to people like me who went, I saw it, I'm good. Did you know, in the cases of those episodes of the show, what the story was before you and your team started investigating?
No, and I could tell you it's deliberate, but I don't know if that's the right word. I mean, we basically just jump in and we find stories, and then we decide it's the term that I use is what's the spinal column of the story. So, with the Home Alone episode, for example, I was in Chicago and, I was at the school, I was doing the interviews, and I'm sure our research team told me or sent me a document that I forgot or missed or what, I don't know. Maybe I didn't even read, but I was there and I saw the pool where they built the basement for the house, the set. And I just remember being like, this is it. This is the thing everybody's going to be talking about. This is what is the spinal column of the episode. Mm-hmm. And that's really how it happens, is we just jump in. I see you. I saw you. Nice try. Nice to see you again. Nice try.
She watches your specials as well. Don't worry.
All right. It was nice to meet you. But no, it really is, we just jump in, and, we have the show coming out in a couple of weeks on Disney Plus called Behind the Attraction.
Yes.
And I was at Disney Paris. I don't want to give it away, but the Small World episode, we were shooting at the Small World attraction in Paris, and one of the cast members did something, and I'm like, this is the spinal column for this episode for sure, maybe for the whole series. But I didn't know that the day I got on the plane. I didn't know that the day the series was like, so that's how it happened.
Well, that Disney show is actually where I wanted to go on this. People I know that know Dwayne Johnson say that he likes to be called DJ. Is there a nickname or initial thing for you, given that you've got the 3 initial thing going?
I call him Dwayne. That's basically, you can call him The Rock, you can call him Dwayne, you can call him DJ. I know you didn't ask this, but he's the great. What you think he is what he is. He is the nicest, funniest, strong. Like, he's just awesome. So I just call him Dwayne. For a while, I called him The Rock because I'm like, who am I to call him Dwayne? But I started to feel stupid because no one else in his company calls him The Rock. So I switched to Dwayne.
So you, however, are you BVW to people? Is there anything like that?
Some people, yeah, some people call me that. Some people call me BV, which I'm not a fan of. And yeah, so a couple people call me Bry, which I hate. That was like my mom's thing, but I don't really care.
Now I know how to properly continue to address you fully by the three names. Well, pulling back a little bit right here, are you familiar with the show on cable called Dark Side of the Ring?
Sure.
Okay, great show about the more tragic tales of wrestling. And after the success of that, I guess Vice or whoever went, well, we should have an after show, and maybe we should have a pre-show, and we could do Dark Side of Football. I have to imagine that that has happened with you as well, where they go, hey, Brian, the music that made us. Hey, Brian, the football icons that made us. I'd have to assume that you turn some of that down by going, we don't know who these people are, but someone else can do it.
You know, I wish I could tell you were right, but unfortunately you're not. When you have a show that's a success, you get meetings easier, you get higher ranked people easier, you get phone calls returned easier. It's easier to sell because I can literally text buyers now and be like, yo, what's up? Are we doing this or not? Blah, blah, blah. But nobody has ever reached out to say, hey, can you do this for us? But like behind the attraction, I went in with Dwayne's company, $7. We pitched a completely different show. Like, could not have been more different. And they basically said to us, we love Dwayne. We love toys that made us. Could you do something different than what you pitched? And that's how it came about. But I have never received an incoming call saying, can you do X for us? We've gotten some incoming calls. Actually, in 2019, we got a call. A production company had sold a series. It started shooting. The production company was kicked off of the show, and they asked me if we would come in and take it over. And to your point, I said no, because I mean, and this was walking away from high seven figures, by the way, gross, not net. Right. But, you know, I was like, I don't know anything about this topic. I don't watch shows like this. I'll do it. I like money, but I just think you could find someone who would do a better job. And my outlook on business is the person who called me, I will do the best possible. I'll have a better career if I'm good to that person in the long run than if I take a job for money in the short run and do a bad job. Then I'll never get a call from that person again. So I was very honest, and they gave it to someone else, which was the right thing to do.
So it's also hard to pigeonhole you, not just with job titles, but in terms of what it is that you do content-wise, because there's Netflix shows. Now there's a Disney Plus show. There's shorts. There's comedy specials. There's podcasts. So I'd have to imagine the bottom line is if you're interested in it, you'll do it.
Yeah.
That's regardless of the genre, regardless of who the audience is, you'll do it.
That's entirely accurate, with one exception, that one day maybe we change this, but I don't like dark for dark's sake. Like, I recognize that Requiem for a Dream is a brilliant piece of filmmaking.
Sure.
I'll never watch it again. And I don't want to make anything like that.
Yeah.
So that's the one. Like, I don't like true crime. I don't like serial killers, like stuff like that. I don't want to do. But other than that, yeah, we'll do, if we find it interesting, we'll do it.
And I have to commend the out of the box thinking that your team did. In the midst of the pandemic, you did the drive-in stand-up specials. I had the pleasure of interviewing Erica Rhodes and Esther Steinberg in support of their specials, and they came out great. They, of course, were skeptical, just like the audience was coming into it, and they were happy with the product. then also you were able to do tapings. I don't know if it's formally announced, but you taped some specials at Tribeca this year.
Yeah, we did 10 specials in 5 days.
In an era when people are going, well, what's happening in stand-up? I don't know. Let's wait and see what everyone else is doing. You guys took charge. So that leads me to wonder, looking at your IMDb page, there's so many forthcoming projects from you, so many things that are in production and post-production and all that. I'd have to imagine that that is incredibly incomplete, that there's plenty more in the works than what the world knows.
Yeah. That's correct. Yeah, you're very right about that.
So all that said, being that you're so quality driven yet so prolific, how is it that you're so productive? Is it to-do lists? Is it delegation? Is it breaking everything into small pieces?
I'm literally one of those people, this is a true story, not a metaphor, that has lists to track lists. So everything I've done, for better or for worse, has been done with lists. And this is not something we had until about 3 years ago, but we have a great bench. Like we have a show, we did the show for Netflix called Down to Earth with Zac Efron. Mm-hmm. A story producer on that became basically the number 2 person on Movies That Made Us. And we're about to go do something else for Peacock. He's going to be the showrunner of that. And that transition was 18 months or less. So when we find great people, we work extremely hard to keep them in the building.
And then another person I've had the pleasure of interviewing related to you and your enterprise is Gates McFadden, the first podcast host under your umbrella. Was basically that podcast company formed for the sake of her, or are there a lot more podcasts coming?
No, it was interesting. We actually started a book division, a publishing division before the podcast division. And the first 85% of my career, if I said something would take a year, it usually would take 3 years. Now, when I say something will take a year, it seems to take 4 to 6 months. So the book division, I could not believe how fast it came together. And then I was in a meeting. There was a company, I forgot all the details, but there was a company that does something technology-wise with podcasts. And a friend of mine who used to work in a network is now their CEO. So he asked me as a favor to do the meeting. I said, sure. And while I was in that meeting, I was like, why aren't we doing this ourselves? So with that, we launched our podcast division. We actually have 50 podcasts. Gates is actually our second podcast. We had a podcast come out before that. I think we've had 3 or 4 come out afterwards. And we have 50 shows in some degree of production.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So in general, are you looking for any of the content, or is most of the content coming to you?
It's all of the above. I mean, it's really, I've never really worked anywhere else, so I don't really know how other companies operate like this, but we really just go with our gut, and my logic is, if I'm passionate, I'll get it sold or I'll get it done. If I'm not passionate, I won't. Or even if I do, it won't be worth it. So Toys That Made Us was the first show I was really passionate about. And it was our first quote unquote hit show. And I don't think that was an accident. So a lot of our podcasts are just people I know or people that I've known for a long time that reached out. And if we think it's cool, we do it. If I had to guess, at some point, we'll create a more official, streamlined system. But right now, we're just going with what we think is cool and what we think the audience will like. And so far, it's been working.
So far, so great. Well, my last on-the-record question for you. Could engage us some research. I can tell which movies you like. I can tell which comedy you like. I have no idea what you're into musically. I don't think I've seen a music-oriented project from you. what does Brian Wolk-Weiss listen to musically?
There's something I used to say for a long time that now, I don't know, probably get me in trouble for saying. So let me try and answer this without getting in trouble. I like epic music. I don't really like any music without lyrics. I'm really about the lyrics. And for whatever reason, I'm very into music that most people that look like me are not into. I've seen Lady Gaga 5 times in concert. I've seen Kesha twice. I love Miley Cyrus. So I'm pretty sure you were not expecting to hear any of that. My favorite, if I can have some grace, my 2 favorite singers of all time, which are tied, not really. My favorite singer of all time is Tina Turner, and then probably tied for second place would be Johnny Cash and Gavin Rossdale, which you probably never heard before. But that's, yeah, I have extremely unusual taste for a white, straight, 45-year-old man.
I thought I was going to get a Van Halen, David Lee Roth in there. No. Okay.
I have one Van Halen song on my iPod, and that's their song from Twister.
Oh, Humans Being. Okay.
Paltrocast.